Ďakujem, dobrý den, thank you very much. I didn't plan to hold the microphone, but we'll figure it out. Thank you very much for inviting me to the cafe, to Creative Mornings, and it's also great to be here on the morning before the Coffee Fest, which is always an amazing event. So I was asked to talk about, can you switch from this photo, please, to the next one? Okay, this is much nicer. I was asked to talk about humility, which is a bit of a tricky thing when you think about it. I feel it's a little bit of a trap because I am not this guy. The next photo, please. Although he's having coffee, I don't want to really deliver a sermon on humility, and I had this choice to either talk about myself as an example of humility, which I find very tricky, or to talk on the behalf of the coffee industry, which is like millions of people, which is again very tricky. So in any case, I want to put it down that I don't want to, be fake humble. I'm a pretty cool guy. Here I am invited to talk to such cool people, so that's fine. I'm not saying And I started working in coffee about 5 years ago. Really didn't expect it, but became this coffee person in Budapest that is one of the important coffee people, and I did well in competitions. I was third in the World AeroPress competition in Melbourne, which is huge. Except if you're from Slovakia, because you had second place last year and first year Lukáš this year. But in Hungary, I'm considered really cool. Okay, but I am sure when I had time to kind of meditate about this topic, that humility was a very important thing. And it is an important thing both in the industry and what I've been doing as a barista and a cafe owner in Budapest. Can you do the next slide, please? So let's start with what specialty coffee is. Can I just quickly see how many people are working in coffee in some way? Can you raise your hands? So about less than half. Perfect. Okay, cool. So, specialty coffee, in the way that we treat it, is a fairly new craft. It takes a new approach on this fruit that is coffee, please. Which is actually very funny, because coffee is something that billions of people have been loving even before us coffee geeks have arrived. And it was always something that is kind of a very simple thing. Coffee was always a commodity. It was traded very cheaply, which had many kind of consequences of it. It was never really meant to be this culinary delight that we are kind of trying to do. And also, coffee is fairly under-researched. If you compare it with kind of something like potatoes, in potatoes there's like not millions, but there's so much research in agronomy and agriculture, and what are the best potatoes and what varieties and how to grow them, and health things. We know so much about potatoes and many other things, but so little about coffee. And in this new wave of coffee, we have somehow tried to take this actually humble approach and say that yes, we do like this drink, but we don't know much about it. And people have realized that coffee can be much more than what we perceived it to be. The basic thing is that coffee is a fruit. And fruits are, sometimes better and sometimes worse. It's not even a metaphor. Coffee is a fruit. It's like the grapes, it's like the apples or the bananas. I don't know any other fruits. So a ripe fruit will be tastier than an unripe fruit, and this is pretty damn objective. The thing is, the basic problem of growing coffee is that the fruits do not ripen at the same time on the tree. So if people pick all of the fruits off the tree and then process them and get the beans out of them, which is the coffee as we know it, then we have a very uneven distribution of ripe fruits and unripe fruits, and most of it will not taste very good. And this is a problem because then the taste won't be so good. The only way we have out of this situation is to roast it really dark. Because if we roast coffee dark, then we get these roasty flavors, which we're kind of used to and they're kind of tasty. And we get this coffee, this bitter beverage. But when specialty came, they took a new approach, or strengthened the approach to get only the best of the cherries. And it turns out that this opens up a completely different world. A world with more taste, a world with more aromas, something that is way more rich. So basically, do the next slide. I actually took this photograph personally from a book. James Hoffman's Coffee Atlas. Anyway, so to get the ripe fruits, you need a very careful and considerate production, selection, and processing. I don't want to talk too much about this, nor would I maybe be the ultimate expert. But it definitely, this is the way to get to the really tasty stuff. Now, to present the tasty stuff, we stepped away from the dark roast and we got into this lighter roast. And this brought out the florals, the fruity aromas, all this wild coffee taste that is coming around. And it also brought this light thing, the acidity. Now, acidity, I will argue, kyselnost, is something that can be very delicious, and we do enjoy it in other things as well. We will do those 3 slides now, if you will help me. Not this one. One more, please. Yeah, for example, the mustard. Mustard has vinegar in it. We add it to our hot dogs because it gives us a nice little edge and freshness. Or the next slide, lemon on a fish. That's how much more direct can you talk about. Fish can be a little bit boring. If we add a bit of lemon, we get this nice edge to it. Or the cake, which is the next slide. So, the thing is that this is what we want from our coffee and specialty. Like sometimes I hear that it's all about the sourness, and it's not really. We want something that is harmonious. And to be honest, this is the biggest challenge for coffee. I don't know, I'm sure that there's people here sitting, like there's everywhere, who are like, oh, I've tasted the special coffees, but to be honest, it's really sour. I could have asked you to raise your hands, maybe, but let's just say I'm sure that there's people who hate this stuff. And that is because it's really kind of difficult to roast it that way, and then to prepare it that way, and to really give this kind of nice balanced coffee taste that both has rich, nutty flavors and both has a little bit of an edge that the jam can give. It is kind of like making pasta, you have to be very careful to get that perfect al dente flavor. And yeah, maybe we can do the next slide. Okay, we'll get there later. I'll give you a story, for example. A few years ago, Alejandro Mendez won the World Barista Championship with a coffee from El Salvador called La Ilusión. And in my cafe at the time, we ordered some, and we hyped it up on Facebook like crazy. We're getting the best coffee in the world. Everybody come. We only had 3 kilos, which is more than we were using at the time, but with the hype, we knew we would use it on one day. And we had very little time to really set the grinder. It was expensive, so we couldn't really kind of learn how to prepare that coffee well. This world champion coffee, well, it ended up being the most unbalanced, worst coffee we've served in 2 years. So kind of, you know, it was a learning experience on this thing that coffee is about, and that we really have to learn how to prepare it well. We are trying to unlock some flavors that are in the coffee, but it's difficult, and we are not yet good enough to do it, or not maybe good enough to do it consistently. So I think in coffee, and this is where humility maybe comes in, is for me, when I talk about somebody like, you know, how to make a good coffee, or when I think about who to hire in the cafe, or when somebody asks me how to open a coffee shop or how to do something, it's very difficult to say there's this one element, like, oh, buy this coffee machine, or, you know, buy this amazing coffee, or hire me as a barista, you know. It's more about getting it, is like how I like get understanding that it is a myriad of many factors, and that you have to be careful about all of them, and you need to constantly improve. It's a little bit like, for me, like architecture. This is like a perfect architectural model of my coffee shop. That I made with my little brother's son. And, you know, I don't know architecture at all, but I've seen architects work, and they look into these crazy details. There's so many things you know, what is the exact height of the bar? How many centimeters do we need between the chair and the door so people can actually walk in? I'm like, oh, 0.5 meter is enough. They're like, no, you need 2 meters, you know. Or how high is the socket? You know, what angle do the lights come in? I don't know, architects do all these very complicated things. And I don't have to know what they're doing, what they are geeking out about. I only have to come in and say, wow, this is really nice. But they have these heads in all sorts of things that they have. And again, the point here is that the one who consumes the architecture just says, wow, this is really nice. And we have no idea what they're doing. You know, but probably similarly with, you know, like web pages, you know, the web or the, you know, newspapers, it's not about the content only. There's people making the programs and the editing and the clickbait subjects and all these things to give you an experience of the internet, and then you just go and read the news and you think you're just enjoying the content, but there's far more energy put into it. So this is how I see us people making coffee. We need to fuss about a million things and then just give a coffee, and hopefully the person will see that, yeah, this is a little bit better. So where to go? Maybe the next slide. Maybe one more. Sorry, this was made during renovation, so it's a bit ugly. But the way coffee has been recently improving is that even since I started working, which is fairly new, 4 or 5 years, many things we have evolved in. Like, this is a good example. You know, this is a fancy water filter that can actually set the total dissolved solids number. You can kind of set that I want my water to have 100 milligrams per liter of minerals. Or I can say, no, it didn't taste so good. Let's try with 120 or much less. And so we can actually set that, and it's a big thing, it's wonderful. But actually, probably very soon is going to be outdated because now everybody's talking about the concrete minerals. You know, how is your magnesium? How is your this and that? You know, very soon we'll be like drinking coffee and like, oh man, your magnesium levels are so off. You know, I'm not having any of this. So we're evolving, or can you do the next slide because this is so ugly. Yeah, or recently the recipe thing has been getting in. We're measuring more. Again, it hasn't been around for so long, you know. We measure the dose of what we do. We like to measure how much coffee we make. Sometimes we measure the extractions. These are all new things, which may sound like a lab, but actually it's more like grandma's recipe for a cake. We just try to follow a recipe. Or roasting has been getting more complicated and kind of more expert. So just to catch this point, the thing about coffee is watching every element because you can ruin it on every step. So if you want a really good cup, you have to watch your producing, your processing, even your shipping, your storage, your roasting, your brewing, and all of that. And that is when you have a chance of making a good coffee. You can ruin it on every step. And then even once you have your nice little cup, and this is where the tricky part starts, you can still ruin it if you're in the hospitality business because there is service. And if you give bad service, forget about everything you've done. It puts everything in parentheses and makes everything sort of pointless. So that again, I think, is a point that is kind of, you know, you put all this kind of art and work and sometimes money and investments to do something well, but you have to face that in the end, when you serve it to somebody, you actually have to be nice. And that is a very, very tricky thing sometimes. You know, when a customer walks in a coffee shop grumpy, in a bad mood, and orders coffee in a not very kind way, it's very kind of challenging. For example, if I'm also tired, to react in a way that is nice, and because if we're on an everyday communication and you're rude to me, I'll just say, hey, you know, I don't want to talk to you. You know, I have better things to do. But I think in a cafe we can kind of switch our mentality and actually realize that we are in the business of accepting people in bad moods because we are actually here to improve it, and we actually have that opportunity. So, and then the whole kind of situation transforms into something completely different. He's not attacking me, this bad customer, anymore with his or her behavior. I am actually having this opportunity to do something that is nice for somebody and improve their day. And I think without this attitude, everything is really, really tricky because we will then return the grumpiness with our bad mood and it spirals out and everything becomes horrible. There is a big culture of bad service in Hungary for sure. So I think that's the next dimension, but that dimension goes further. Yeah, I don't know. What's the next one? It's just promotional photos. The thing with good service is then, okay, so let's say from my situation, okay, so let's say it's my coffee shop. So obviously I want to be nice to people because it's my business. So, you know, I get things out of it. But then there's other people working in that coffee shop. And I think that's like another level where you can screw up everything. You can be kind, but if the people who you're working with are not happy, again, everything is gone. Everything is totally pointless. So that's another dimension that we could talk about, and I don't want to go on too long, is trying to keep the people you work with happy or somewhat happy, or realizing that you can't really make somebody totally happy, but at least having the effort and having it in mind, because an unhappy barista will not make the customers happy. I know, I worked in places very unhappy, and I just, when you start hating the whole situation where you work, and hating your boss and hating your product, there's no way you're going to stay kind more than a week. So we have this thing. And then again, there is more, I think, to screw up the whole coffee thing. Which is, so let's say we have the culinary thing, we have the service thing. You like people, you're nice to people, you love coffee, you're a geek, great. And then somehow we might expect that we will get like the like a Nobel Prize for being nice and for doing something that we love, but actually life throws like Excel sheets at us, because then we have to figure out the business, which is again this whole category of things that we need to. It's also kind of humbling, because you're like thinking, hey, I'm super barista. Why would I have to fiddle with the price of a paper cup? Well, it's because, nobody will actually send you the prize of being a nice barista. You have to kind of learn this part as well. And I know that's something that's been difficult for me and many others who have been doing this coffee thing, is to accept that we actually have to fuss with the trade part as well, and to kind of keep it real. So just to wrap up, I think I try to kind of explain this several different levels of the whole coffee thing and how everything comes together. For me, it's definitely with the help of my colleagues, and I think that's the only way to go with teamwork. But to wrap up, I think there's one last level that we need to not forget, which is, like, after all of this intricate, maybe, oh yeah, that's the customers. Next slide, please. That even when there's this intricate, complicated world of coffee where there's always something to improve upon, even though basically what I am recommending is to have this neurotic quest for improvement on all fronts and to basically be unsatisfied about everything, I think what finally we need to do in the end of all of that, and long talks and stuff like that, is to realize that it is, after all, just a cup of fucking coffee. That's that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tibor. So, when did you have really good coffee last time?
Half an hour ago.
Thank you. And when did you start with coffee?
About 5 years ago. I switched from being a lawyer, which I found really boring.
But why? I'm sure not because you were bored.
Yeah, I wasn't actually making so much money as a lawyer, but that's a different story. It's, I really didn't like what I was doing, so I was interested in coffee. I think many of us have this dream, oh, we should open a nice, cute coffee shop, and then when I took the first barista course, which is kind of a traditional Italian-style barista course, that's when I really fell in love. I was like, wow, this can be your job, kind of to do the milk nicer and set the espresso, and your project is finished, you like give the coffee, they're like, thank you very much, here's the money, project ends. Amazing, no European funds to, and so on.
What is your favorite coffee country?
I don't think I have one, honestly. I think I more see coffees in moments. Like so many countries have brought coffees that are like at that day amazing. So so if I go to a coffee shop that has many coffees, I generally like to ask the barista like, so what's really tasty today? Because I know, and maybe the barista knows that I know that it's so tricky. So tell me what really works today, and I will trust you and taste that.
How do you see sustainability of coffee growing?
Well, this is something that maybe you would know more about. Actually, I'm sorry to not include a lot of this issue. I'm not really an expert. I think it's extremely important. You know, it's so let me just put maybe a broad answer, and then if somebody wants to add something. There is the social sustainability and there is the environmental sustainability. Both are very problematic. You know, climate change has been affecting coffee. The quality Arabicas are going higher and higher up the mountains, and then the mountains are like stopping at some point. So we have a big problem from that perspective. Just the supply of coffee. And you know the old problem that coffee is still an amazingly unjust trade, and huge parts of it are unjust. And actually, the specialty coffee industry, as far as I know, like it's true that I'm not buying green coffee. I'm not involved in that, but the people who buy it buy it at a higher price. So that's kind of really nice. It's a higher price than the fair trade price, generally. But it's small. It's a small fraction of coffee. So basically, you know, you go to Guatemala, everybody's selling their coffee on the C market price, which is low, or C plus something, low price. And then you pick this one cherry, one farmer, like, hey, your coffee is amazing. I'll pay you 5 times as much. The neighbor's still not making any money. So I think, you know, I think what specialty is doing is beneficial in terms of social sustainability, which can, I think, come back into environmental sustainability. But to do it on a larger scale, it has to become bigger than specialty. So you know what, Anonymous, I totally agree with your question, and I hope that I will know more. I think we have it. This should be a priority. That's my diplomatic answer.
How is probably yours magnesium?
Hey, how's your magnesium? Huh? Who was that? I don't know. I take about 2 pills a day. They say it improves the mood a little bit, so they're a bit dry, but you know, I try to have 2.
And we have last question, which is, what is your most favorite preparation of coffee for yourself and customers?
I will be honest, I think I am an espresso person. Like, I like a nice balanced shot of espresso. It doesn't even have to be the wildest. Give me something kind of comfort specialty. So yeah. Which flavor do you expect from coffee? Should I answer that too? Well, I just kind of partly answered in espresso. I'm very happy to get something that's... there was this coffee company, Handsome, some of you might have heard, and they switched to 2 categories. It's a very smart thing. There was comfort coffee and adventure coffee. Comfort coffee was like specialty coffee, but it's still, you know, generally the nutty, somewhat chocolatey, caramelly coffees with some acidity to make it balanced. So this very pleasant, round thing that you can get from an espresso. And I love that with espresso. It makes my tears flow in the morning. In filter, I do like it to be more crazy. So this is where, and to answer the country thing, yeah, a nice Ethiopian, Rwandan, the amazing Kenyans, the Panama geishas, can bring these really tea-like, really wild, really super clean, that's important, clean, light and bright flavors. And that's, yeah, when you get one of those well brewed, it's really amazing. What latte art? Latte art is, I agree with the people who say it shouldn't be called art, because I don't think it's art, it's cute patterns. If somebody can actually do it as art, all my respect. But it's a great thing. I think I enjoy to pour latte art. I enjoy getting latte art. I think it's also an introduction to people in the coffee world. Like everybody, I think, who's a barista, the first thing you see is like, oh my God, I want to do this. And then later you become more snobby and you're like, latte art is for losers. I mean, it's nice. It's a decoration. So I support it, but also it has to have, your cappuccinos have to have a good texture, and so on. And just one more thing about latte art. I think latte art is also a great introduction into coffee competitions. I think many of us, when you first compete, or maybe it's difficult to get those crazy coffees or that kind of equipment to compete in the barista championships many times. Slovakia has had imported champions for many years because first it was, what's her name, that lovely girl, Monica from 3FE, and then so on. What's his name from? Maiko coming from Bar. So you just bring the coffee from abroad. That's pretty easy. That's it's difficult. Maybe change now. But latte art is something that everybody can get involved in. I think it's great. It's like an entry in our coffee world. More? Favorite coffee roasters? Well, okay, I'm so happy that we are finally working in Budapest with Casino Mocha. It's a local roaster. I waited for a long time to have somebody local. We can so much faster feedback. The roaster comes in. It's great. Before they were there, we imported our coffees from others, but it's great to have somebody local. So I will just say them, and then it's great to get coffee, like guest coffees from other places. What are 3 dimensions you consider most important when hiring a barista or waiter? I think in coffee, it's about like getting it, like what I try to talk about. This is where the problem is. Like if I get a CV that says, hey, I learned the barista course and I'm getting good at latte art and I love it, and that's your CV, I don't know, that's maybe not so inspiring. If I get a feeling that the person actually likes coffee or maybe comes in the shop and has an espresso and a filter coffee, and understands it somehow, has the right attitude about coffee, that is important. You don't actually have to know everything, but kind of get it. Then, interpersonal skills, I think that's in this field, like you have to work with others. We're very tricky people, I think, in every bar. So it's about being good with people. And there's one more thing that is really important, which is crazy hard work. I mean, we haven't really talked about this, but baristaing is a pretty, and hospitality is a bit of a militant job. And I'm a pacifist, but there's you have to do things, especially coming from an office background. I think there's more kind of maybe flexibility in some things, you have to be there at 9, you have to be clean, everything has to be there every day, all day, and they're constantly looking at you and check, so you have to have a very strong work ethic.
Okay, I think that was the last one. Tibor Varady. Thank you, Tibor. It was very great, really inspiring.